Imagine for a second. You walk into your kitchen in the morning, right?
Yeah.
You push down the lever on your toaster, and instantly, boom,
Oh, yeah. Total darkness.
right? It just causes a rolling blackout that takes down like 3 surrounding towns. It sounds totally absurd, I know.
It does, but I mean, functionally, that is the exact nightmare scenario grid operators are sweating over right now.
Exactly. Except they aren't worried about toasters, obviously. They're staring down the barrel of, well, roughly 58 million electric vehicles.
Yeah, that number is just staggering.
It really is. I mean, in 2024 alone, global EV sales smashed past 17 million units. So, while you and I might focus on the cars themselves.
The fun stuff, right? The sleek glass dashboards, the crazy 0 to 60 times.
Yeah, that's stuff they put in the commercials. But the actual revolution here, and really the single most massive bottleneck we are facing, is the hidden, incredibly complex infrastructure required to actually power them all.
Right, because that transition from liquid fuels to electrons, it is monumental. I mean, we have to completely abandon this old mindset of simply plugging in a car.
Which is easier said than done.
Way easier said than done. What we're actually attempting to do is hardwire the entire global transportation network directly into local power grids.
Wow.
Yeah, it's arguably the most significant shift in how human beings distribute, manage, and consume energy probably since the widespread adoption of alternating current.
Which is exactly the mission for our deep dive today.
Yes.
We are going to explore this wild, just rapidly evolving world of EV infrastructure.
There is so much ground to cover.
There really is.
Yeah.
We are looking at everything from the multi-billion-dollar battle over global plug standards to, how you charge a massive semi-truck without literally melting the local power lines.
And we can't forget the off-grid rescue tech, too.
Yes, and the highly agile startups that are stepping in to fill the massive gaps that the big utility companies are leaving behind. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
If you have ever stood in a dimly lit parking garage, desperately trying to download some random third-party app just to pay for 20 miles of range.
Oh, I've been there. It's the worst.
Right. You have experienced the friction of this transition firsthand.
Hmm?
The global charging landscape right now is, honestly, it's a highly fragmented mess.
It is deeply fragmented, and to understand why there's so much friction, you really have to look at the mechanics of what charging actually entails.
Because the terminology gets thrown around a lot.
Exactly. But there are massive physical differences depending on the speed. According to data from ZapMap, you basically have these 3 tiers. You've got slow chargers, which typically operate overnight at about, say, 1 to 5 kilovolt amps.
And at that speed, the car is doing the work, right?
Right, yeah. You are using the car's onboard inverter to slowly convert AC power from the grid into DC power for the battery.
Okay, so that's the slow tier.
Then you step up to semi-fast chargers, which deliver around 7 to 22 kilowatts. But the real heavy lifting, where the industry is hyper-focused, is DC fast charging.
And those are pushing what, like 50 to 150 kilowatts?
Or even more, yeah.
And the economics of that jump are just staggering. I mean, setting up a slow charger might cost a local business maybe under $5,000.
Barely a line item for some businesses.
Right. But the moment you want to install a DC fast charger, you're suddenly looking at like a $65,000 piece of hardware per unit.
Yeah, and that price jump comes down to the actual physics of the equipment, because a DC fast charger completely bypasses the vehicle's onboard converter.
Oh, so the station itself is doing the heavy lifting.
Exactly. The station is pulling massive amounts of AC power from the grid, converting it internally, and then shoving direct current straight into the car's battery pack.
That sounds intense.
It is. That requires heavy-duty rectifiers, advanced liquid cooling systems, massive electrical conduits. I mean, it radically changes how a city planner or a real estate developer approaches the whole problem.
Right, because now it's a budget question. Like, do you spend your budget giving 100 apartment residents slow overnight access? Or do you install 2 ultra-fast chargers at a local grocery store?
It's an agonizing choice.
I bet. Especially since the physical connection itself isn't even fully standardized yet. This really sounds like the era of having a different proprietary charger for every single brand of cell phone, but like scaled up to a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure level.
That is a perfect comparison. The physical hardware is definitely still highly localized. Like in North America and Europe, the dominant push is toward the combined charging system, or CCS.
And CCS is the one that supports plug-and-charge.
Yes, exactly. It supports a standard known as ISO 15118.
Meaning the car and the charger actually talk to each other directly.
Yeah.
So you plug it in, they exchange this secure cryptographic handshake, and it automatically authenticates and bills your account.
Without you ever tapping a credit card or opening an app, it's seamless. It uses digital certificates embedded right in the car to verify its identity.
But that's just the West. What about the rest of the world?
Well, if you look at China, which is the absolute heavyweight in the global EV market by sheer volume, they don't use CCS at all.
Oh, really? What do they use?
They use the GBT standard. It's heavily regulated by their state utilities. It handles both AC and DC, and the mandatory compliance for public safety is just incredibly strict.
Wow, okay. And then there's Japan.
Right. Right. Japan actually pioneered early DC fast charging with the CHAdeMO protocol. And of course, you have Tesla, who spent years building its own proprietary tech, the North American Charging Standard, or NACS.
And they've had to adapt that globally, haven't they?
They have. In China, for example, Tesla actually installs dual inlets on their cars, one for their own tech and one to physically match the local GBT standard.
See, that just blows my mind. How can we possibly expect a smooth global transition when the most basic physical handshake between the car and the grid requires that many adapters and, regional workarounds?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the standardization war isn't actually about the physical shape of the plastic plug.
It's not.
No, the real battle is over the communication protocols layered underneath all that hardware. Software layers like the Open Charge Point Interface or OCPI.
Okay, what does OCPI actually do?
That software is what dictates how all these different networks talk to each other to allow secure roaming. But more importantly, it dictates load management.
Load management meaning telling the grid exactly how much power to send and when.
Exactly that. Because without a standardized digital language coordinating the draw, you could literally have millions of commuters coming home at 6 p.m., plugging in their cars simultaneously.
Oh, wow. And causing a localized grid collapse, like the toaster analogy.
Exactly like the toaster. The plug is really just the physical manifestation of a massive software routing challenge.
Okay, so if standardizing passenger cars, which only pull maybe 50 to 150 kilowatts, is this complex,
Yeah.
the difficulty must multiply exponentially when we look at long-haul freight.
Oh, absolutely. It's a totally different ballgame.
Right, because passenger cars get all the headlines, but the heavy-duty trucking industry is the actual backbone of the global economy.
And the energy demands for freight completely rewrite the rule book. We are transitioning from passenger loads to heavy-duty trucks that require megawatt-scale charging.
Megawatt scale, that's huge.
It is. And at that scale, where you build the infrastructure matters just as much as how fast it delivers power.
Which brings up the massive infrastructure partnership between Pilot Travel Centers and Tesla. They are targeting these critical U.S. freight corridors, right? Routes like I-5 and I-10.
Yes, and they're deploying these V4 cabinet charging stalls.
And the numbers on those are wild. A single stall is designed to deliver up to 1.2 megawatts of power.
Yeah, to contextualize a 1.2 megawatt draw, the cables themselves have to be actively liquid cooled just to keep them from literally melting in the driver's hands.
That is insane. But it works, right?
It does. The operational result is that a Tesla Semi can recover roughly a 500-mile range in about 30 minutes.
Which is a very specific, almost magical number in the freight world, isn't it?
It is highly strategic. That 30-minute window perfectly aligns with the legally mandated rest breaks for professional truck drivers.
Oh, so they aren't actually losing any time.
Exactly. For a decade, the primary argument against electrifying long-haul trucking was the downtime. Fleet operators argued they simply couldn't afford the lost revenue of a truck just sitting idle at a charger for hours.
Time is money.
Exactly. But if the physical charging time is compressed to fit exactly within a legally required rest period, that downtime argument just evaporates.
And building these megawatt chargers at Pilot Travel Centers is honestly a genius move because those locations already have the food, the showers, the vast parking lots.
Right. The amenities are already there.
You aren't asking a driver to change their route. You are embedding brand new tech seamlessly into a decades-old habit. But wait, I have to push back here for a second.
Sure, go for it.
You said 1.2 megawatts per stall. If a truck stop has, say, 8 of those stalls and 3 trucks plug in simultaneously, that single truck stop is suddenly demanding the electrical capacity of a small town.
Basically, yeah.
How do the local transformers not just instantly catch fire?
Well, the short answer is they absolutely would.
Cheers.
Yeah, if you tried to hardwire an 8-stall megawatt station directly into a traditional rural highway power line, you would experience severe localized voltage drops, and you'd very likely blow the transformers.
Yikes. So the grid is the bottleneck again.
Grid constraints are the major reality check right now. The existing utility infrastructure along those remote highway corridors simply does not have the capacity for that kind of instantaneous, massive draw.
Okay, so how do we solve that? How do we decouple the charging station from the immediate limitations of the local grid?
The most immediate solution gaining traction right now is battery-buffered DC fast charging.
Battery buffered.
Yeah, so the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, NREL, they actually published a fascinating case study on this exact problem.
Yeah, I think I read about this.
Yeah, they looked at a site that required a massive utility substation upgrade to handle the anticipated fast charging demand. If they went the traditional route, that utility upgrade would have cost the developer roughly $3 million.
$3 million just to upgrade the connection.
Yeah, exactly. And it would have taken years just to get the permits and run the new high voltage lines.
So instead of waiting years for the utility company, what do?
They installed a battery buffer right on site. Instead of pulling power directly from the grid to the car, the grid slowly charges a massive stationary battery bank throughout the day.
I see.
So when a vehicle arrives, it pulls its high voltage charge directly from the battery bank, not the grid. The NREL study showed this approach saved about 65% of the capital costs.
Wow, 65%.
Yeah, with the incremental cost for the batteries running only about $400 to $1,000 per kilowatt hour.
That is brilliant. It's essentially a water tower.
A water tower, I like that.
Yeah, like if a neighborhood needs to put out a fire, you can't demand a fire hose amount of water from the city's main plumbing all at once, or the pipes will just burst.
Right, the pressure would be too much.
So instead, you let a regular garden hose slowly fill a massive tank on top of a hill all day long. When the fire truck actually arrives, you open the floodgates from the tank, giving you incredible pressure without stressing the city's infrastructure at all.
The water tower analogy is incredibly helpful for visualizing the buffer, but there is one major caveat there.
Yeah. What's that?
Well, a traditional water tower only flows in one direction, right? Down. These battery-buffered stations are increasingly designed for bidirectional flow. It's also known as vehicle-to-grid or station-to-grid technology.
Okay, so what does that mean in practice?
It means if the local grid experiences a brownout during, say, a massive heat wave, that charging station can actually send its stored power back into the local grid to stabilize it.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. And it doesn't just have to be lithium-ion batteries holding that power, right?
Not at all. For high-power, short-duration demands, the industry is actually exploring mechanical alternatives.
Mechanical, like what?
Well, take an electric city bus, for example. It might only stop at a passenger terminal for 3 minutes, but it needs an incredibly massive pulse of energy in that tiny window.
Right, because it's on a strict schedule.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But lithium batteries degrade really quickly if you hit them with massive spikes like that repeatedly. So instead, some stations use mechanical flywheels.
Wait, flywheels? Like storing energy as physical momentum.
Precisely. They use grid power to spin a massive rotor suspended on magnetic bearings inside a vacuum chamber.
That sounds like science fiction.
It really does.
Okay.
Because there is virtually no friction, it just keeps spinning, storing kinetic energy. Then, when the bus connects, the flywheel uses that momentum to spin a generator, instantly dumping a massive high-voltage electrical pulse straight into the bus.
That is wild physics just sitting at a normal city bus stop.
Pretty cool, right?
Yeah. And there are other methods too, right? Like compressed air energy storage, where off-peak grid power is used to literally pump high-pressure air into underground caverns or massive tanks.
Yep, and then when you need a power spike, you just release the air to spin a turbine.
Or even just using second-life batteries, taking old degraded EV batteries that only hold maybe 70% of their charge.
Right, they aren't good enough to run a car anymore.
Exactly, but they're perfectly fine for sitting in a shipping container behind a truck stop, quietly soaking up solar power.
What's fascinating here is the paradigm shift in the fundamental nature of infrastructure itself. We're watching EV charging stations evolve from being passive loads, essentially parasitic drains on the grid.
Right, to something entirely different.
Yes, into active participants. They can peak shave, they can store intermittent renewable energy from wind and solar, and actively balance their local microgrids.
But even with battery water towers, spinning flywheels, and smart software, there are still scenarios where you have absolutely zero grid to connect to in the first place.
That's very true.
Think about, a family whose EV just dies on a remote stretch of desert highway, or a coastal city where a Category 4 hurricane has just wiped out the power lines entirely. You cannot rely on a stationary charger if the grid it's attached to was gone.
which requires a total inversion of the infrastructure model. If the vehicle cannot make it to the power, you have to find a way to physically transport the high voltage power to the vehicle.
And here's where it gets really interesting. One of the pieces of tech tackling this is the Electway battery portable charger. It completely untethers charging from the ground.
It's a very clever solution.
It essentially takes a 15 kilowatt DC fast charger and merges it with a 15 kilowatt hour lithium battery into a single unit that operates 100% off-grid.
It's a highly pragmatic piece of engineering. I mean, it carries an IP54 weatherproof rating, which means a tow truck driver can drag it out in the pouring rain or heavy dust.
No babying the equipment.
Right, and because of those fragmented plug standards we talked about earlier, it features interchangeable cables. So it supports CCS, CHAdeMO, GBT, and NACS.
Oh, that's incredibly smart. So a roadside assistance crew can pull up to a stranded driver, regardless of what brand of EV they're driving, and just plug this unit right in.
Yes, and the mechanism here is crucial. Because towing an EV isn't like towing a gas car.
Right, you can't just put it in neutral and hook it up.
Often you can't tow them with the drive wheels on the ground without damaging the electric motors. So you usually have to dispatch a specialized flatbed truck, which is expensive and takes forever.
But with this portable unit, in about 15 minutes, you can dump enough electrons into the car's battery to give it 10 to 15 miles of range.
Exactly. Just enough for the driver to safely pilot themselves to the nearest public charging plaza.
That completely eliminates the need for the flatbed entirely.
It does. And the applications for this scale up dramatically for emergency response.
Oh, like natural disasters.
Yeah, when a natural disaster knocks a regional grid offline for weeks, municipal fleets still have to operate. How do the electric police cruisers, ambulances, and utility repair trucks stay on the road?
I hadn't even thought of that.
We are seeing the deployment of mobile chargers, like the systems built by charge rigs, acting as critical disaster relief nodes. Startups like EV everywhere are pushing this even further, building 5-megawatt-hour heavy-duty mobile battery stations on massive trailers.
These huge rolling power banks.
Exactly. While companies like L-Charge are building completely containerized off-grid units powered by clean fuels.
But okay, I have to ask the skeptical question here. Are these mobile units just an expensive Band-Aid?
How do you mean?
Well, are we just treating the symptom of range anxiety because the industry has basically failed to cure the underlying disease? Which is, a lack of permanent, robust infrastructure.
It is a fair critique, for sure, but framing them as a Band-Aid kind of misunderstands how resilient networks actually function.
Okay, explain that.
Well, even a perfectly mature, gold-plated electrical grid will experience localized failures, whether that's from extreme weather, hardware degradation, or cyber disruption. Furthermore, permanent infrastructure is just incredibly slow and capital-intensive to deploy.
That's true. Pouring concrete, laying conduit, and securing utility permits, that takes months, if not years.
Right. You can't just build a permanent 20-stall charging plaza in the middle of a farm field for a 3-day music festival.
Exactly.
So mobile charging units provide instant infrastructural elasticity. You can deploy them to a seasonal tourist destination during the summer peak, move them to a construction site in the fall, and then route them to a disaster zone in the winter.
They are totally dynamic nodes.
Precisely. But this raises an important question, though. Who is actually building these dynamic nodes and writing all the software to make them work? Because it generally isn't the legacy utility monopolies.
And that is the perfect pivot, because the massive government grants and legacy utility companies, they're focused on the macro level, right? The massive highway corridors and the multi-million-dollar substation upgrades.
The big flashy projects.
Exactly. But if you look at the day-to-day friction points that actually stop a normal person from buying an EV, those problems are highly localized. And right now, in 2026, it is a wave of global startups solving those hyper-specific problems.
The urban charging dilemma is a perfect example of this. The macro grid planners largely overlook the multifamily housing market.
Right. I mean, if you own a suburban house with a driveway, charging is easy. You just plug it in at night.
Yeah.
But if you live in a third-floor apartment in a dense city and you park on the street, owning an EV is a logistical nightmare.
A total nightmare. But startups are attacking this from fascinating angles. You have companies like Nodum designing chargers that integrate directly into the existing architecture of homes without driveways.
Oh, that's smart.
And Cosmic Charging is retrofitting shared apartment blocks to ensure equitable access. But I think one of the most mechanically interesting solutions comes from a startup called It's Electric.
What do?
They install curbside chargers in cities, but instead of digging up the street to connect to the city's main power lines under the road, they tap directly into the unused electrical capacity of the adjacent buildings.
Really? The mechanism there must be brilliant.
It is, because most residential and commercial buildings have a total electrical capacity far higher than what they actually draw on a daily basis.
Okay, so they just reroute the extra.
Essentially, yes. The startup physically routes a connection from the curbside charger through the building's exterior wall directly into the building's electrical panel. They install a submeter to track exactly how much power the charger pulls, completely separating it from the tenant's actual electrical bill.
And a property owner actually gets a cut of the charging revenue, right?
Right.
Turning their building's unused electrical bandwidth into passive income.
It's a win-win.
It's like if the major utility companies are building the massive main arteries of this new electrical body, these startups are growing the capillary network.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, the arteries get the power across the state, but it's the capillary network that actually figures out how to get the blood all the way to your fingertips when you're parked on some narrow city street.
The capillary analogy is spot on, especially when you look at the software layer, because getting the charger installed is really only half the battle. Keeping it online is the other.
Don't get me started on broken chargers.
Right. A staggering number of public chargers are broken at any given time. A startup called Charger Help realized this isn't just a hardware failure issue, it's fundamentally a labor issue.
Oh, they don't have the people to fix them.
Exactly. So they built a dedicated workforce specifically trained to diagnose and proactively maintain charger uptime. Meanwhile, companies like Anapi are building the back-end platforms based on that OCPI protocol we discussed earlier.
So acting as the translation layer.
Exactly, essentially acting as the digital translation layer so that all these different proprietary networks can securely talk to each other. And Corica is actively untangling the absolute nightmare of dynamic, transparent billing across all these fragmented networks.
And we are seeing these startup solutions really adapt to their specific regional needs. Like in North America, the venture capital is heavily weighted toward that high-performance software and megawatt hardware.
Very tech-focused.
Yeah. But in Europe, the startup ecosystem is hyper-focused on sustainability and the circular economy, figuring out how to recycle the infrastructure itself.
Which is incredibly important for the long term.
Definitely. And then in the Asia-Pacific region, you see entirely different physical models, like battery swapping stations for urban mobility. Look at India, where a company like Decharge is using AI to actually help neighborhoods build and manage their own community-owned charging micronetworks.
But this explosion of localized innovation inevitably collides with the legacy systems. Historically, utility companies and city zoning boards move at an absolute glacial pace.
They really do.
They rely on centralized, highly predictable models, but when a startup proves that you can run a profitable curbside charger by submetering an apartment building, or when a community uses an AI network to trade their own stored solar power locally, it effectively stress tests the old regulations.
So red tape gets in the way.
The rigid policies governing energy distribution will either have to adapt to accommodate these nimble capillary networks, or they risk choking the entire transition to a halt.
And for you listening, this is exactly why this dense, invisible web of protocols, batteries, and startups matters to your daily life.
Absolutely.
The timeline for decarbonizing global transportation isn't going to be determined by how many screens a car manufacturer can pack into a dashboard or how fast a new EV can go from 0 to 60. The real finish line here is seamless integration.
That's the ultimate goal.
It is the moment when you can drive a truck across a continent, park your car at a dense city apartment, or, weather a 3-day grid blackout without ever having to consciously think about how the electrons are actually getting into your battery.
And once we achieve that level of seamless integration, the capabilities of this network open up scenarios that honestly sound like pure science fiction today.
Like what? What are you thinking?
Well, consider the intersection of this infrastructure with autonomous driving. As vehicles gain the ability to fully navigate without a human, and as AI energy management systems become perfectly predictive, we are likely going to see a fundamental shift in how vehicles behave when we aren't even using them.
Wait, what do you mean?
Imagine waking up and realizing your empty self-driving EV deployed itself at 2.0 am to autonomously hunt down the absolute cheapest off-grid megawatt charger on the edge of town.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Effectively operating as an autonomous energy trader while you sleep and returning to your driveway fully charged before your morning commute.
Wow. The idea of your car acting as a financial agent, autonomously hunting down cheap off-grid energy in the middle of the night, that completely redefines what a vehicle even is. That is just an incredible thought to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden world powering the EV revolution. Keep questioning the invisible infrastructure around you, and we will see you next time.